hearing and budget work session. I'm calling the meeting to order, and the first thing we need to do is to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, nay. Ayes have it, the agenda is approved. We actually have public hearing on our agenda, but we have no one signed up for it. But now we have the 23-24 proposed local budget discussion. Dr. Bryan?
Madam Chair, just to review briefly what we discussed on Thursday for the proposal for the budget. We put these together in two areas after gathering feedback. First, current expense budget. As I noted on Thursday, as a discussion point to start with, a increase in local supplement for certified staff from 10 to 11%, and then an increase in local supplement for classified staff from 4 to 6%. And that's outlined on the documents that were provided on Thursday, and then also provided a capital budget that, in addition to the over $1.3 million in items, also added in the special appropriation for $600,000 for Jonesboro site. Also, Madam Chair, just as a review, there were some questions asked out of the budget session on Thursday. So you have a new packet this evening for your information. And I'm just going to very briefly go through that and say what's in there, and then maybe answer one question. First item in there, we have job descriptions for what we would consider folks who support mental health. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to just go through the packet first for you. Also, you have a current expense request form that shows everything outlined in the local budget. And it also takes into account what it would look like for additional funding as it was proposed on Thursday. Okay. Also, there's a little bit more detail in there. Once you get past that packet, it's the line item detail sorted by object in the local budget. And also included in that are highlighted some areas that we thought might be pressure points with inflation. And those are on page, I believe, on page 2 for you there. So we just tried to highlight some areas that we thought might be included in that. We're not making any predictions on that, just possible areas that might come under that impact. We also included a detail on ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding. It's a one-pager, and it talks about allotments that have either been encumbered or have been earmarked in each one of those areas. And that's for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. There's also a budget calendar, which was approved by the board, and that outlines the calendar of events that we've been looking at as we head towards final approval by the Board of Education in the middle of May. There was a request for differentiating noting items from individual school requests from the local budget. We're still working on that request. We want to make sure we get it right. Want to make sure that we're looking at different sources with that. I will say, as I said on Thursday, that we expect and look to maintain the positions we have in place right now, but we're working on that and working a little bit at the building level to make sure all those things are differentiated so that it's correct when we bring it back. You also have a athletic supplement schedule, the current athletic supplement schedule from Lee County Schools that takes into account the pay raises that were provided last year by the Board of Education for our coaching supplements. I believe it had been just over 20 years since that supplement list had been increased. So that packet is there for you as well. There's also an item in the packet regarding the planning document for projected 23-24 salaries, taking into account hopefully as many changes as we can account for with that. And just a reminder, there are estimated starting salaries there. Those might change depending upon what happens with the budget at the state level. And then local supplement takes into account, of course, Social Security, retirement, and hospitalization, which are calculated there based on what we believe the rates will be for that, our best estimate at this point. And those were the planning documents that were provided to our principals and directors as they work through different things. Also, there is a chart with average salary, average supplement by position, and that also lists out the number of employees in that particular area. So that gives you a little bit of a average salary and supplement. It of course, it's an average, so it does not take into account the highest and lowest piece of all that, but I believe that was information that was requested. And then there's also a document at the end that talks about supplement proposal estimates, and that accounts for the numbers that we are asking for the 1% in each area, both for certified and classified. And it also did take into account, it was looking at like a 12% increase from the state level to try to account for that. We understand, as I said on Thursday, we know that that's not, it's not an exact science at this point because we just don't know. But it is a number that can be adjusted, hopefully, as we move forward towards May, so the board can make some decisions if that's the way the board decides to go, or at least can be, hopefully, have a little bit more information to make the best decisions possible in regards to that. You also have in your packet a couple of different things regarding the capital budget. You have a PowerPoint that looks at the different items that were requested, and also those items have been put in a priority list as well. It does include just call attention to the demolition of Jonesboro School site as well on that. Madam Chair, I believe that is everything that was requested at the last meeting for everyone's information.
Does any board member have anything that they feel like they didn't get that they had requested?
Madam Chair, just what I had requested, Dr. Bryan said they were still working on part of that, so I'm good with that.
And what was that, sir?
One of them was pay for what I think was Warren Williams pre-K coach at $92,000.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I have a question of clarification on the big budget package. You said this is the proposed 23-24, so this is assuming the increases already? This isn't showing current?
We thought it'd be best to show the increases as they were in the proposal from Thursday, just to take that into account. We certainly understand that, there's plenty of work left to be done, but it puts it in, it puts it so you see it in numbers
Future
within
numbers.
the document. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I want to make
Yes.
sure is I'm looking at future numbers. Okay.
Right.
Madam Chair, I had a question on that also, if I may. So Dr. Bryan, with the line item detail where you guys sorted through, so the only, I guess, one of the questions I had there was, so line 181 just says supplements in the amount of $4 million and change. So I'm assuming that includes all certified, classified. That is just all supplements paid, right? Okay.
Yes.
And then the only other one right off was regarding, so like line 211, 221, 231 for Social Security, retirement, hospitalization. Is it correct to say that those are the additional parts of salaries paid that are not covered by state funds? So I know there's a few salaries for like principals, administrators, teachers. So is it correct to say that those are positions that we,
Takes into account
Provide.
our local funding for that,
yeah,
all of it,
so not provided by state funds, obviously, because it's in local budget? Okay.
yes.
For the slides where we have the capital budget request, just a small suggestion. If it's something that we're going to do, for instance, in-house construction, or like the Jonesboro site, things like that, if this is something that actually goes like before the county commissioners, I'd suggest you might want to put some photographs in it. Photographs say a lot. You know, they can see what they have to do. Like the outdoor bleacher replacement, maybe they want to see what the bleachers look like now. I think Gaster was going to look at them this week as well. And I know definitely appreciate the way that you went through the priority list. That helps a whole lot. And so a whole lot of things that go with that. And am I also to understand that the athletic supplement was done last year?
Yes, ma'am.
It says 9/14/2021. I just want to make sure I had the
Yes, ma'am.
correct date on that. And Eric Davison is still going to do some research on the surrounding areas, so we can look at that stuff in the future. And then
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
If we can help with that, please let us know.
Okay. Well, I gave him the particular counties. I'll be more than glad to give you the same ones as surrounding, just so we can justify our actions. Now, back to the descriptions, where we got the layout. This is kind of what we have. We can get this offline. DPI is a great resource as well. But with this, where you got like the school counselor, and then you also did the school psychologist. There was
Madam Chair, I know you want a little bit more detail with that.
yeah.
So I've asked Dr. Waller to come up and talk a little bit about how that intertwines together, all those positions. And she'll do a great job, if I may ask her to come up now.
Absolutely.
Thank
If she
you.
don't mind. Here she comes.
Good afternoon. And we would, first of all, like to express appreciation for the additional staff, because it has tremendously benefited our students during this past years, and that has made a tremendous difference in their success in school, their success in life. But when we talk about the different aspects of our student support team, we think about the counselors, social workers, behavior specialists, psychologists, and they don't operate in silos. So it's really, there's so many needs that we spread them across to everyone. When we think about the counselors, they are responsible for developing a school-wide counseling program. So what that entails is all staff work with the counselors on aligning their standards with the academic standards of students, of teachers. So if you have a teacher that is teaching time, so that curriculum standard could align with a counselor standard like time management or social skills, helping reach goals to accomplish so many tasks within a certain amount of time, but putting the social emotional aspect to that time management. So when we think about counselors, they also work with the academic needs. What are the barriers that are hindering our children from meeting their academic goals? So they work in that area, but those goals also, and any barriers to academics, is also going to go over into social emotional or social skills or this type of thing, which is what we think of when the social workers come into play. Social workers are the liaison typically between the home, the school, and community. So they link community resources with students who are having difficulties. And so there's a collaborative effort between counselors, social workers, and the community to address those goals. They may be mental health goals, they may be financial goals, poverty, cultural goals, but those are what we think of when the social worker is linking those outside resources to addressing the needs of our children. But there again, You can't just say, okay, little Susie has this problem in this area, so we're just going to limit one person working with those. It has to be a collaborative effort across teachers, social workers, and counselors. And the social workers and the counselors are those people that put the puzzle together for the children. They work with teachers. They also work with outside professionals. Some say, okay, the counselor's supposed to work with the teachers and the social worker's supposed to work with the outside professionals. Fortunately, here in Lee County, we work together. It's not, okay, this is my job, this is your job. Our job is to work towards solving the mental health issues, the academic issues, or social emotional issues for our children. A behavior specialist are fantastic. Wish we had more of them, but it's hard to find. But they are the ones that identify if a child is having a behavior issue in the classroom, then the teacher can call on the behavior specialist to come in, do observations, talk with teachers, talk with parents. What is triggering that behavior? They go in and observe those behaviors and then come up with interventions or strategies to address those behaviors that they see in the classroom. Try those interventions, do progress monitoring data with them. If it doesn't work, then we readjust. We modify that intervention until we can get it right to make sure. Then the behavior specialist can work with the counselor, the social worker, connecting those outside resources or how those needs can be met in the school with the school counselor. So it all kind of works together. With the psychologists, we think of them doing a lot of the EC testing. They too can do behavior interventions, but they are spend most of their time doing the testing to see if a child qualifies for EC or other behavior scales, behavior assessments. So to split them in parts and say this one does this and this one does this and this one does this, they all work together. But if you have specific questions, I'll be glad to help.
So you're aware that they're trying to increase a lot of money coming in for mental health. What would, if you had magic wand, and we all know you're the fairy godmother in Lee County, so what would you do to say, boom, this is where I would put a person there and why?
Where would I put
Yes,
additional
ma'am.
resources? Anywhere that is designed to meet the mental health needs of the children. I was talking this afternoon earlier with Dr. Calhoun, who does provide the mental health clinicians in the school. He would be able to provide additional mental health clinicians in the school. That would be a great way to increase the mental health services for our students, but also just making sure that we have those counselors and social workers that can be more proactive, to the children's needs rather than going back in and just band-aiding a situation. So with the number that we have now, that is much better than what it was when they had 3 and 4 schools apiece.
So, do you know right off the top of your head how many social workers the school has, how many guidance counselors, how many?
We have 14 social workers, 26 counselors. We are just moving Mr. Dennis Duke, who is, and we're very fortunate that most of our social workers are master level, and many of them are working on their clinical credentials. So that is a really big plus for our district. Because it is so hard to find a bilingual counselor or a therapist of any capacity, we have looked and we have searched, but they are just so hard to find. Mr. Duke is working on his clinical supervision, so he's going to be moving into the school mental health position along with Reagan. So that leaves his position available now or vacant, but we felt like he could really serve a really good need for our newcomers, our bilingual students that need mental health services.
Ms.
That's okay.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a question. These particular positions, school psychologist, behavior specialist, social worker, and school counselor, are they typically funded at the state level for position allotment or dollar amount?
I will have to defer to Ms. Jones on that.
And kind of secondary to that, and this may be more in your wheelhouse, is I know in several different counties across the state, they have the funding for these positions. They don't have the personnel. They can put out all the job advertisements they want, and they simply are not enough qualified school psychologists, qualified counselors. Do you feel like that here we do have the pool, we don't have the funding, or do you think that we have the funding but not have the pool?
Not begun looking to find a replacement for Mr. Duke.
I watched the two videos, and that was one thing they said is, if you have position allotments where the money cannot be moved to an alternative use or purpose, then you could have all the position allotments you want, but if the personnel don't exist in your county, in your community, that money just sits there, and it goes back to the state because it wasn't able to be funded. That's why, that's really the crux of the question. So, Ms. Jones, how are these typically funded?
We receive months of employment for 007 positions, but you have to take into account that's not just your guidance, your social workers, and your nurses. That's also your support personnel as far as EC is concerned, your lead teachers, and so forth. So we do pay for
It's
quite a
months.
large amount out of local as well, because there's never enough to cover it all. What you're referring to, typically what I see from my office is the psychologist is where we're really, last year we had to leave months of employment on the table because there's no psychologist to be found.
Right. That's what we're kind of hearing at the state
And
level.
you can't convert that to dollars to where you could use it for something else because there's just.
In the absence of a psychologist, you can't hire 4 social workers.
It is specific to a psychologist
Okay.
only, that specific allotment.
Okay.
And we did receive grant funding.
Okay.
So that was my next question. What other resources do we have grant-wise? And I know there were things that we had in the extra dollars, the COVID dollars for mental health and things. How much of that do we have any of that left?
You will see on the COVID, there are some positions that are done. We do receive a nursing grant from the health department with the county. It's a pass-through grant that comes from the state through the county. That covers approximately 3 nurses, but it never covers all of the benefits. So of course, we have to shift what exceeds the amount that they allot. They allot $150,000. That's not enough for 3 nurses. So the remaining portion of that gets diverted back to local to pick up that piece. Like Dr. Waller stated, there is the St. Hills Mental Health Grant that does cover 2 guidance. And what we typically do is we try to put the cheapest people we can there so that it will cover as much benefits, and then put the more expensive people in state because those are position allotments.
Okay, so the 2 guidance counselors from San Lee, and the reason I asked that is I actually went to the county commissioners. If you recall during COVID, our nurses and our teachers were doing a lot of the contact tracing, things that normally sometimes would go to a health department that we refer them out to. So I was requesting more dollars for that, and that's why I was asking that particular question. The chair of the board actually sent me something from San Lee, but it didn't have exactly positional wise. So is there agreement for a certain dollar amount or just to provide 2 positions? Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
It's 2, but I think it's been, like 170?
Is that up for renewal again, you think?
We have to apply for it each year.
What's the name of that agency again? Sand
St.
Hills?
Hills Mental Health. And it's a multi-county agency.
And they've been good. We've got it for a while.
So we have funds, make sure I'm understanding it where everybody understands this. We have funds, but they're only allotted for a particular position. For instance, the counselor, the guidance. But we have teachers that put on their capes every day and show up to school. And this is where I'm trying to focus the direction is. there has to be something somewhere, somehow, if it's petitioning with the legislator. But when we have those fundings for those counselors or those positions that we cannot fill, but we have teachers who are actively doing that. And a lot of teachers are sitting up here can tell you the same thing. You know, they go all from teacher mode to mental health to social worker to whatever they need. There should be a provision somewhere that says we can actually use those for professional development. So if you had something in professional development related to mental health that you think would benefit our teachers, would you have anything right off the top of your head that you think would assist in order to meeting the STEAM goals that we need in the schools?
Not from the position funding, because that does not, you're not allowed to, I mean, those are strictly salaries and benefits for those positions. Now, you would have other various pots of money that you could possibly use for staff development.
And I will say the NCSBA, that's one of their legislative goals, is to advocate for flexibility on these things, because just what I said, there are so many counties that got the COVID drops for certain positions that just don't exist. And I know Dare County, for instance, was saying, you know, there's just not that many school psychologists.
Because, you know, we ask for calendar flexibility. Everybody thinks we just want to flex all the time. That's not it. But I truly understand, and that's what Sandra explained probably more eloquently than I, is that we need that flexibility. And so if you know how we can go about that, because we're advocates for public school system.
And I'm not trying to be political, but in years past, you did have that flexibility, and they have taken it away over the years. And I've been in this a long time, so, I mean, years and years ago, there was a lot more flexibility than what we have now. They kind of lock it down.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
We are having right now a staff development and trauma. That includes our social workers.
Can't quite hear.
We are right now doing a staff development on trauma and grief, and it is primarily directed at our social workers, counselors, and nurses. However, we do have that open to teachers, so we have teachers that would be able to benefit from that training as well. And that is one of the big things, the big roles for the counselor, because they are charged with doing a school-wide counseling program. So that involves your teachers, your teacher assistants, your bus drivers. So it includes all those to make sure that everyone is aware of the mental health needs of our students.
Madam Chair, I guess for my clarification here, just with regard to strictly this local budget request, I don't see, among the list of salaries in here, I don't see anything for any of these, what we're calling mental health support positions. Is it correct to say that there is no local funding supporting that right now?
131 is going to be and that's what I was referring to, is there's multiple positions that fall into that 131 object code.
So a pretty small amount, I guess, of the whole. Okay.
What is the referral process, Dr. Waller? What's the referral process right now if someone had some type of concern that was mentally related? What's the process in the school system now? They take them to a teacher, they take them to the principal, or is there someone on site that comes and writes the referral that refers them to another facility?
It kind of depends upon the school. Each school has their own referral process, but it can be wherever it generates from. If a teacher, bus driver, first thing in the morning sees little Johnny get on the bus and something is not right, the bus driver can then go in and talk to the counselor or the social worker and say, I think you need to check on this child. So that it can be direct that way. Sometimes students refer themselves, or a parent may call. But it too then depends on what that situation is that was referred. Is it something that we then need to provide law enforcement to help us with that investigation? Do we need to involve DSS? So that's why it's so important to have everyone trained in the district on suicide and child abuse and neglect, the whole involvement. So we take a referral, or if we just notice that little Johnny's not doing well in school today, they're sitting back quiet, which is unusual, then the teacher may say to the social worker, will you just talk and see if anything's going on? It may have been that last night there was a domestic violence issue at the home, and the police came in, and it was a lot of violence and noise and everything, and the child is just just needing a little bit of time to self-reflect and be. So, and then for our school mental health program, which Ms. Corliss and Mr. Duke will be moving in to, they do have a more structured formal because there's parent permissions slips and some assessment that goes on that. So that's a more formalized process, as well as Dr. Calhoun clinicians. We do have those referrals that go home to parents and all, if we see there might be a need, and then we offer that service to the parents for the children.
Dr. Waller, did I hear you, did I understand you to say correctly, every school has its own referral process?
It's some principals, for social workers and counselors, they are typically the ones that make those direct referrals to DSS. But they make it in conjunction with, say, the teacher was the one that got the information. And a lot of times teachers are like, it's a long drawn-out process, and what do I need to do? So the social worker or counselor will sit with them or work with them to make that referral. Some principals ask that if there's a referral that made to DSS, that they're notified first. Some schools just say for the counselor and social worker to handle it. It's all the same process. It may just be funneled a little differently with the different personnel.
Okay, so we do have a standardized process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, are all the teachers, faculty, staff, do they all know that process? Is that talked about? Are they aware of that?
Yes, sir. At the beginning of the year and then through our HR, everyone receives training on child abuse, neglect, mental health, that type of thing. But each year at the beginning of the year, all social workers and counselors provide a staff development on child abuse, suicide, threat assessment, human trafficking, bullying, those type of things. So they present a staff training. We also reach out to those coaches who are non-employees. We have a PowerPoint that they have to see and sign off on all those aspects as well. Our bus drivers, custodians, we do the same thing with them. And then now we have just recently started a mid-year training, refresher training, just to put it back in front of everybody's mind on child abuse and human trafficking, the grooming, just to make sure, we're halfway there this year, but let's just remember that our children may be experiencing some difficulties.
And what outside, staff-wise, instructor-wise, what outside resources do you have? Like the sheriff department come in, do a certain section, Dr. Calhoun come in? Or is it just our staff teaching our teachers?
Our SROs are very valuable to us in helping out if there's a violence crime that needs to be, or violent act on a child that needs to be reported to law enforcement. Our SROs help us with that, or our Sanford PD or Broadway PD, wherever the child resides. So they are more than willing to help out. I just received a PowerPoint from one of our guidance counselors that's working with the SRO on doing some training, just working with children on vaping and all. So SROs are kind of like, they hear the buzzword or the buzz issue, and then they help us with that as well. We refer out to outside resources, our partnership, a local mental health, those agencies that we bring in and help a lot. But a lot of those areas in need for those resources are identified by the social worker, the counselor, the psychologist, behavior specialist when they're working with the child. They connect those community resources.
Okay, does anybody else have?
I have a follow-up on that. I'm sorry, I'm singing. It makes sense to me that if a teacher witnesses something in their classroom, that they would have a point of contact. I have a question about the Say Anything app. If Joe Blow on the streets sees something and decides, I'm going to use this app, where does that go and how does it funnel?
Dr. Bryden, I get those at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes.
I remember when I was chair, I got a couple of notifications that something was going on.
They can go online. There is a call center it's in Miami, Florida, that those calls go to. And if it comes in after a certain time and it's not life-threatening, they will wait and let us know by 6 o'clock the next morning. But each school has identified staff to be on the Say Something team. So they have a team that an alert will come in and they get it. There's a district team, which includes Dr. Bryan, myself, Dr. Dawson-Bach. So if there is a life, they will call us immediately if it's a life-threatening. Not only do we have Say Something, and it is completely anonymous. You cannot find out who made that report, which sometimes can be a detriment to getting to the bottom of the situation. But those come in to us through, we will get an email, or like I said, if it's life-threatening, they will call us immediately. For our bark alert, now Say Something is secondary, bark is K-12 or K-13, and that's monitoring emails or Google Docs. And the same thing, we will get a text message or an email from bark saying this situation has been identified. And they too would call us if they thought it was a life-threatening situation.
Just thinking like, back in the day, we would get a phone tree, you know, for weather closings. You're going to get a call, and then you call this person, that, you know, is there something similar for, if there's something going on, who do I report to? Who does that person report to? Who does that, you know? And you're saying, yes, that system is
And
clear and
particularly-
explained, even to our BTs as they're coming in fresh and new.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Excellent.
They, one of our social workers will meet with our BTs at the beginning of the year and go over all the staffing, so that they're aware.
Go ahead.
Any
Madam
questions?
Chair, I had a question on guidance counselors, if I could.
Well, hey, welcome. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was listening. I thought the angels were calling us.
A voice from out of nowhere. I think I heard that there were 26 guidance counselors. I didn't know if we could get a breakdown of elementary school, middle school, high school for those numbers.
Okay.
And if there's any guidance counselors specifically 100% dedicated to career and college readiness in the high schools. Maybe that's a separate position, or maybe they're called guidance counselors. I'm not sure.
Okay. All of our elementary schools have one counselor. Our middle schools have 3 counselor positions. There, Sandley has one position that's open. So, I'm sorry, West and East only have 2 counselors, and Sandley has 3 counselors. And then Southern Lee has 4, and Lee County High School has 5. Lee County High School will, beginning in April, have the Duke counselor, career counselor. They will be joining the staff, which they have not been in place for a while now, and that is tremendous in helping connect to our children to college and careers and applications and that type of thing. And then we also cooperate with CCCC and having the college support as well, counselor. We do have a bilingual counselor that serves both Southern Lee and Lee County High School, and then if there is a need somewhere else in the district, she will also help us out with that.
Mental health.
Okay.
Thank you for,
Yes, we have alibi.
Before you leave, I just, in the conversation, you know, and it does take everybody, you know, throughout the day, from the time they get on the bus to the time they go home. I get that. One of my concerns that I want to bring up, and this is something I was wanting to talk to Dr. Bryan about, in that information that he provided us for for his evaluation. And you mentioned it a couple times, and that's social emotional learning. And in the original context, when it was designed, that's what it was designed for exactly what you're talking about. It was designed to help students that have certain issues to get down to the bottom of it and find out. And what's happened is become political. And it's become an issue to where other avenues of agendas are being pushed in through that system. So, and you use CASEL, is that correct? Is that what, you use this it's a nonprofit, it's CASEL?
some
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's it.
Yes, Castle.
And I was doing some research last night on that, and I just wanted to bring that up because mental health is such a big thing now, especially with the COVID years it went through, the effects it's had on the children and all that kind of stuff. I just think moving forward that we need to really be careful because I don't want the teachers to end up having to be psychologists when they need to be third and fourth grade teachers. And because they don't have it's good to get the training that they need because everybody needs the mental awareness of how to pick up on certain things. That's a given. But I don't want it to be to a point to where the teachers have to become psychologists and do the job of a psychologist when they're not trained for that position. And that's one of the things that concerns me. Another thing that concerns me is that when you read into about what Castle is about, it talks about equity based off one race is more than another race. It's based into the CRT system. And you can read directly into that through the Castle on their website about having to try to move from a dominant culture. So it takes a little bit to read in between that, and all I'm getting with that is I think we need to tread lightly on how we proceed to make sure that we're doing what's best for the children and not indoctrinating them and not putting this burden on the teacher to make them psychologists and let them be teachers. That's all I'm saying.
And that is the whole purpose of having the mental health support, is to make sure that our teachers don't have to do that, that we do make it, they do need definitely to be able to identify risk factors and anything that they may think is interfering or a barrier to their learning, but having the mental health staff will help, they will take that responsibility. All the teacher has to do is then refer it to the appropriate mental health person, and it takes them away from, it allows them to have that student, the counselor or social worker work with that student, and then the teacher can teach whatever. With Castle, we do not use the whole Castle. There is one of our social workers that she uses bits and pieces of it to work with some of our OCS students, which she brings it down to their level. It is not an indoctrination. It's to help children deal with the barriers and the issues that they are dealing with on their own personal level. So we're not here to help make them think a certain way. We're here to help them deal with issues that are interfering with their learning or creating a burden to their learning.
And that's the main thing.
Right, that's our role.
Yeah, that's the main thing. But I just want you to look with open eyes as we progress. And so that way you're aware, because
Right.
it's not hidden, it's happening. And I just, I seen it, and I seen it through their website, and that made me step back and think a minute, like, exactly how are we doing our mental health? Because that's one way that people with certain agendas push that agenda, is a snake in the grass. And I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Waller, thank you for everything that you do. Definitely
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
To add on to what Mr. Gaster said, we entertain things that come from the community, but one guy actually gave me a hard time. He actually just called me a myth buster. Well, you can call me what you want to call me, but you got to show me. If there's a litter box in a high school, you better send me a picture. If there's a dirty book that's in a library somewhere, you need to show us the evidence. We just cannot go from hearsay. I'd also like to remind the community who has concerns for things like the SEL, we just recently passed a policy. One of you guys from the policy, remember what exactly number that was? It was the one right before the parental rights. And that policy clearly stated what he just said, what you're not allowed to do in the schools. I personally have not seen it, but if anyone sees it, everybody has my number, more than gladly give it out. You can text me, call me, email me, because we don't have a hotline yet. I know Dr. Bryan's going to work on it, but I have yet to see any of the things that they kind of accuse the public schools of doing. And I will remain an advocate for our public school system at all costs. And so with that being said, if there is something that comes to you guys for by all means, just send it, get it to us, and we'll work it out, and we'll get to the bottom of it. But I have not witnessed any of that physically in our school at this time. And if anybody can challenge me, I'll be more than glad to listen, okay? Dr. Bryan, sir?
May I ask one question? I think I probably know the answer, but on the little, on this same PowerPoint, there is an asterisk beside number 1. Is that just to designate it as number 1, or is that there's additional information?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Just wanted to clarify that there wasn't a caveat to that.
Anything else?
That's all.
Okay. Real quick, since it's a part of the finance and it's something that came up earlier, I just want to brief the board real quickly about our audit. And I want to dispel any myths that are out there or any rumors that's out there. We are not behind. We appropriately requested an extension. Was the board fully aware of that? Not necessarily, but the right things were still done as far as the extension being put in. There's no dollars missing. Ms. Kelly has everything down to the exact dime. We're not missing any money anywhere, anyhow. The audit is being extended, and in our April meeting, our auditor will be coming here to discuss that with us, and some findings that he had that we can possibly improve. We can always improve on things, and so that's where we stand on the audit. I did get I felt like it was a semi-threatening message today in reference the possibility of us losing funds for whatever reason. Ironically, just so you know what your chairwoman did was look at all the legal aspects that's on there. Their notes were all wrong. I sent it immediately to our lawyer because I wanted him to look at it. And if DPI or anyone else starts to think that they're going to come after the school board or somebody in our school system, I just want to remind them, this is a brand-new board, and there's one thing we have no problem doing, and that's our homework. And I would like for them to do their homework before they start making these type of comments or threats or emails in reference to what they will or will not do. We've done everything like we're supposed to be doing it, and we're right on track, and I'm very proud of that. I just wanted to put that out there, and if anybody's got any questions about that later, you're more than welcome to give me a call. Do you have anything?
Madam
Look
Chair,
like you're waiting.
since this is just local budget discussion, I would actually like to discuss local supplements, if I might, for a minute.
Okay.
So I know I had sent a couple requests to Dr. Bryan asking about how supplements are funded, just lots of different questions, right? So I guess just to clarify before I really get started, Dr. Bryan, I just want to confirm that since we pay supplement as a percentage, there is, I read that Governor Cooper has proposed in his budget an 18% increase for teacher salary. Don't know what's going to pass, but the point of asking this question is, if we go to the commissioners with our budget and then a salary increase that large happens, that's going to leave us, I'm going to say, on the hook for that increase, right? Which is in the ballpark of like $500,000. So that's,
And just to add two things, I believe the governor's budget is 18% across 2 years, divided up. And I think that's one of the reasons why I stayed on Thursday. Two things. One, this is a starting place for us as we move towards May. Hopefully, we will be able to gather more information as we move towards May so the board can make decisions appropriately. And also, the reason why Ms. Jones built in sort of a percentage in there regarding what might come from the state. So we've tried to put that in there, knowing that the board has a month and a half to gather more information and to move forward with it. But to answer your question, that is certainly something to consider, and I know was the point of what you were raising, the questions you were raising regarding that.
okay, thank you for that. So with that, I said via email to the board that I had a couple things I wanted to propose here. And again, I just want to be very clear, this is budget discussion. This isn't, saying that we're going to change anything. This is just some stuff I want to throw out there to the board. So last year in budget season, obviously I was not a member of the school board, and I did attend the county commissioners meeting and asked them to question that supplement increase just as liaison for taxpayers, right? Just to make sure that the board had done their homework on, what our cost of living in Lee County is compared to other local counties, and then kind of compare our supplement to theirs just to see if we're in line with where everybody was at. I'll just flat out say I don't think we did a great job of selling that. I think it could have been done better. But at any rate, with that having been shot down last year, I am going to just assume that there may not be an appetite to do a supplement increase this year. So a couple things I wanted to throw out there to the board is some ideas to try to affect the teacher pay discussion is the first one would be funding some kind of program for classroom expense reimbursement. So the thought here would be to provide a fixed dollar amount that a teacher would be able to be reimbursed for expenses in the classroom, whether it's, I mean, to me, it wouldn't matter if it's decorations for the class for the year or supplies or just anything they need, because I think we all know that teachers spend money out of pocket to support their classrooms. So while this wouldn't necessarily be a raise, it would be a way to help teachers keep more of the money that we pay them already, right? So kind of like a raise. So I don't have any figures to give you, and that's why I asked for like the number of teachers so I can go away and try to put some dollar values to these things with Dr. Bryan's help and bring it as a better proposal later, but that's something I just wanted to toss out for discussion. And then the second one, kind of along the same lines, is so another fixed dollar amount. So I think we all are aware in Lee County that housing prices have gone through the roof, and that includes like local apartments for those who rent. And I thought it might be an interesting idea to potentially look at, I don't know what you would call it, a housing stipend, or like I know in the military they do housing allowance for folks who live off base. So thought it might be an interesting idea to provide for staff that lives in Lee County to acknowledge that drastic increase in cost of living and propose some kind of housing allowance that would be, I guess, like a monthly amount. Again, that would just kind of acknowledge the fact that there has been some changes locally that is affected by things the commissioners voted for, right? They voted to bring in lots of new business and lots of things, which has in turn helped increase that rent price. So I thought that might be an interesting way to request additional funding to pay our teachers while not necessarily asking for a supplement increase. So those are the two proposals I wanted to throw out that would just be essentially in addition to the supplement that exists. So after I thought about those two things, I actually stumbled a question to myself yesterday, and that was, well, do all of our surrounding counties still just pay a percentage supplement like we do? So I looked today at Harnett, Chatham, and Wake just to see what the answer to that question is, and I found that Harnett County actually does a purely fixed amount for their supplement. There is no percentage. Chatham does kind of a combination. The bulk of it is a fixed value, and then they add a little bit of percentage based on years of service. And then Wake is still fully into percentage. So there's some differences across the board, but I guess my thought on that from a budgeting standpoint is that fixed supplement versus a percentage, I feel like that would be easier to budget for because we know how many teachers we need. We would know that there's that, a fixed supplement that covers the whole thing. If a percentage increase shows up late from the state, it wouldn't throw off our budget as a school system where we then have to go find that additional money to cover that additional supplement. So I kind of want to toss that idea out there also. And to be honest, especially with that last one, if you guys would agree, I'd like to work with Dr. Bryan and come up with some kind of proposal to switching from a percentage supplement to a fixed rate supplement, just to propose to the board and see what everybody thinks of that.
I think it's an interesting idea to look at. Of course, I'm just sitting here thinking, certainly accounting for that, because if you say we're going to do a fixed amount for some people in order to keep it under this budgetary number, for some people it's going to be a drastic raise, for some people it'll be a pay cut. And so I think that would be one of the headaches is that you would have to encounter is that in order to stay within a budgetable amount, you're going to have some people that have a lower paycheck as a result. And so that's hardly looks like a raise if the paycheck goes down. The one that I'm curious about the most is the program expense reimbursement, or the classroom expense reimbursement. In your early estimations, would you picture that as a bucket of money, say $150,000, and then teachers would apply for reimbursement? Or would you see that as each teacher has a bucket of money? Because I see a race to be the first person in with the most reimbursements. You know, somebody comes in and says, well, I built custom furniture. I want $100,000 reimbursement. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just asking for A, budgetary, so it's not just an open checkbook, and B, how would it be equitably ensured that everybody had equal opportunity?
Sure. So I guess to touch on both of those, Sandra, so I know, so actually Harnett and Chatham both, so with the fixed portion of their supplement, they do have a breakdown. Harnett County, it looks like they've got 4 different levels, so 0 to 2 years, 3 to 14, 15, 25, and one more. Chatham has a bit bigger breakdown where there's more values there, so I think that would hopefully help to alleviate, like you were talking about. So if we did one fixed rate supplement, to your point, somebody would be taking a pay cut, some others would get a drastic increase. So I think we can tweak those values a bit to hopefully keep anybody from getting a pay cut, but we'll work on numbers. So I think hopefully that would at least leave that from being so extreme. But then the thought on the reimbursement program was to be a per teacher item, not necessarily just one huge bucket where everybody would race to get it. And I think with that program, I think one of the potential problem there is somebody would have to run that program, right? So there would have to be some kind of, I hate the idea of like an application thing or something. I feel like the local principals would know if what a teacher's asking to buy is proper for their classroom and could just make that
Administration
approval.
cost.
Madam Chair, we've in the past, a couple of times during my tenure, we have allowed teachers to purchase classroom supplies. And we worked out a system logistically to keep track of that. So I think that's what you're talking about and figured out how that would work.
Yep.
And be manageable.
That's right. And
That's the thing, is sustainability.
That's right. And I mean, to me, an extra thought there that I felt like would be a good thing, it seems like that's a pretty marketable benefit, right? So when we talk about attracting new teachers, you know, yeah, maybe Lee County doesn't have the largest supplement compared to some of our neighbors, but hey, they give $200 a year for each teacher. They can go spend that on their classroom and not have to come out of pocket. I don't know what the value would be. I completely made that up, but it seems like that would be pretty marketable to the folks who are going out and recruiting for us to, you know, hey, we do offer this as, I want to call it a benefit, but it seemed like it would be marketable.
Madam Chair, also just like to add in there, we would need to look at state personnel laws in relation to the fixed number and what that means for particular employees. Certainly, we can do that within the Finance Committee and put all these things on the table and make sure we get all the answers we need to before, if the board would like to do it that way, to bring it back to the board.
Sure.
Well, I would offer the same thing to Alan that I did with Eric. It's great when we have these great ideas. In the military, you used to call it the good idea fairy. But when you bring it to the table, come with a little bit of ammunition with you, like this has worked in another county, this hasn't worked, these are the steps they took. Kind of have like a little bit of plan, and if you're just asking to sit down and discuss it, that's not an issue. But if we can gather some more information on what exactly it is you're trying to do, and that way you can support what we're trying to accomplish as the board. I would like to run one thing by you guys, for all of us, including the superintendent here. Our policy talks about the budget, and it's due no later than May the 1st, et cetera. In my experience, since I've been on the board, every time there is a meeting before the county commissioners and we're asking for money, it's Andy standing up there with a slide. And us sitting back, and I know it's our board and we can do it the way we want to, Andy's made that very clear. What I would suggest is we're like a family, and you guys have known. I mean, you can talk about somebody in your family, but somebody outside of your family does it, you get in a fighting mode. So I'm just suggesting, just a suggestion, that we have something, not just our finance, which would be Patrick and also Alan over here, but us as a board, when it's time to present this, that we have a plan and we present it. And it could be so much so I say, sir, we would like to, when you're confronting the entire board, if it's something to do with IT, there is Jamie out there. He's online, but there's Jamie out there, or there's Alan. They can come up and speak on that behalf and be prepared for it. And it would be really nice, and I know we can't force you guys to do it, but it'd be really nice if we could have our chief finance officer and our superintendent there as well. And so any questions that come up or anything that has to do with programs, I think the community should be very aware. And if we're going to ask for something, we should at least be able to attempt to attend and be there and support that. If you disagree, I don't have a problem with that. And I think visual aids is good. Like when you say, we need these bleachers, look at these bleachers, give them the worst picture you can get. And, because they need to physically see what we're doing in the school, because no one knows, and I know particularly the new board members, I'm certain you would agree that things are different once you get behind this desk. And I think it would look very supportive if we at least attempted to do that. And if you got vacations plans, I got it. But if we could just kind of work it out and work together and present this to them, I think we'd have a better success rate. Anybody got any opinions on that? Yes.
I would love the opportunity to help make that presentation to the commissioners, especially, if there's anything, I don't know, for me with the supplement stuff, I've been working on that quite a bit here. And again, I went as a private citizen last year, just talking about making sure they'd be good stewards of our money. And I would love the opportunity to make a presentation to make that argument for potentially some kind of increase, whether we talk percentage or fixed dollar amounts or whatever we come up with as a board. I would appreciate that opportunity.
Would you support that, Patrick?
Yes, and I have a comment once we get through with all this.
Okay, cool. Okay.
This is going back to two ideas by Alan, which I have no problem with on either one of them, but I want us to also think about how we can focus on our classified, because your two ideas were focused on certified, which is great. We need, something to help our certified, but we can't forget about our classified either. And again, I'm not the good idea, magic wand, fairy, whatever. I don't have an idea for that, but we can't forget about those people either.
That's right. Yeah, and I think, so the other counties I looked at, they do have mentioned, so they've done similar things with like the fixed supplement for classified as well. So definitely want to keep that on the table too. Yep.
And my suggestion would also be that we work together with people that's in our community. As you well know, Dr. Bryan, and I think Jamie online and Eric here beside me, we attended the public policy luncheons with Saga, and they had some wonderful slides out there. I actually showed one to one of the county commissioners and said, look at this, because I wanted them to see the comparison of how much is given locally. They do give more locally than on a national level, but the things that we can look into, you discussed like the teachers, he had ad hoc, I think it was ad hoc realtors. I'm not putting an advertisement, I'm just saying, he gives their percentage, a discount to teachers and things like that. And I think if we need to get the whole community together, because we all have the same exact goal, and that is to improve our school system. I know my goal is this, and it may get me in trouble for this, but the day and time to come where every parent who is paying $500-$700 a month to have their kids in private schools and various schools that says, you know what, I'm going to that public school, because that's where the best education is. There's not litter boxes in the bathroom. They're not teaching this. They're not teaching that. It is absolutely the best place to be educated. So that's kind of what my goal and objectives are. But with this one, with the policy, if we go back and look at their slides, instead of reinventing a wheel, we can just make the path and lay it out. And this is what they do, and we can prove that other counties, what they give us supplements, and as far as we're completely transparent with our finances. And I think we're doing a great job. We admit when we make mistakes, we admit when we can improve, and we also have a performance audit coming up as well. So I think all these steps will help us. So does anybody on the board have any other suggestion or any other way you think we could help gain faith and trust in the community?
I had a couple of comments, if I could, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to give a little bit of perspective. First of all, to your statement as far as transparent for finances, I tried to, yesterday and today, I tried to look at the counties that orbit Wake County, which is, either adjoining or close to Wake County, just to see what they were proposing as far as their budget amendments for this year, since we're all going through this pretty much the same time as far as the county's perspectives. And ours was the only one that had any data online. So I think we are by far the most transparent as far as this process goes. to Alan's ideas, and I think they're good ideas. I just wanted to give a little bit of perspective. I think our average teaching salary is about $53,000 a year. So going from 10% to 11% is roughly $530 a year, which is about $40, $45 a month. So a lot of these ideas sound like good ideas, but they sound like they may come in a little bit more expensive than the supplement increase. And in my research when I was doing looking at surrounding counties just to see what they were planning to do, Lee County Schools started this year with about 24 open teaching positions, certified teaching positions, and I think right now, it fluctuates. I think we're somewhere around 40 teaching positions. So I actually don't think that this budget is aggressive enough when it comes to filling those positions. Chatham County last year did a $3,000 signing bonus and retention bonus for their teachers. It looks like Johnston County is has a plan to do $4,000 this year for EC teachers, math and science teachers, which are some of the hardest to fill. So I would like to see us as a board try and figure out a way to fill as many classrooms as we can and hopefully improve on that number at the beginning of the year, and not have 24 classrooms, taught by long-term subs or taught by teachers pulling double duty, basically. And in full disclosure, those 24 positions for Lee County at the beginning of this school year were significantly better than our neighbors. I think that worked out to about 3.5% of our open teaching our teaching positions. Chatham County was about 10%. I think Harnett and Moore County were somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. So I think we did a good job, but I think as far as education goes, teacher in the classroom is sort of a cornerstone that we probably need to focus on.
Did you have anything else, Jamie? I don't want you to feel like we left you out.
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Okay, the last and final thing, I think a lot of you went ahead and I asked them to take the fundamentals of, or the basics of the finance classes, and my suggestion, none of this stuff I'm not your teacher, I can't check your homework and stuff, but you are required to have 12 hours every 2 years, and you sign in online, you do it, and then you also send a note to Susan. And I know a bunch of people did a whole bunch this weekend, but the next one in order of priority that I would recommend would be the budgets, expenditures, and audits. You will find that the person that is teaching that class is actually one that works with our own CPA, Dale Smith, and it's a great class as well. I just want us to be able to get those classes done before then.
Madam Chair, point of information, just so you know, that one is an hour and 45 minutes long. Don't start it at 10:30 at night. You will find yourself hating yourself. But it is very helpful, and Johnston County's CFO is very funny and informed, and he does a really good job on that particular training, so.
I can tell you there's another board member, I won't say who, called me and actually said I fell asleep and I had to restart it again. But what I would like for you to do is deep, if it's an hour and 45 minutes, I'll be honest with you, it probably takes me 2 or 3 hours, because what I do is I go back, I write all the notes on it, but then I also go back and look, like Johnston County, I go back and look at their finance records, what they look like, and you talk about a great layout for finance and transparency. Johnston County is amazing. They have a strategic plan, how they're going to do it. They're not as good as Lee County, of course, in other ways, but that's just something that we're trying to gather best practices. So I know we have a policy chair right now that he says he goes down rabbit holes when he's doing the policies. Going down that is not necessarily bad if it leads you to another direction as far as improvements in our schools. But if we could just, please try to do the next one. I'm assuming if I give you one every week or so that you might can dedicate an hour or two to our school system. But I do appreciate it. And if no one has anything else, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, real quick before we adjourn.
Oh, okay.
So just, I guess, speaking as finance chair and looking at our budget calendar, it looks like April 11th at the monthly board meeting would be the point where we would vote on this budget to essentially It looks to me like I'm going to call it an interim approval. It gets posted on the budget webpage for review, and then May 9th's meeting would get final approval. So knowing that, I tend to like to work ahead and not work right up to the last minute, just in case something comes up. So I would like to take some time, obviously, to digest the information we've been provided tonight, the detailed information for this budget, and potentially have a special called meeting before April 11th to talk through some of these things as far as, any potential supplement change, proposals or, mental health specific proposals. I'd like to see us bring specific things to the board that we can ask to have change for that April 11th interim approval.
Well, the April 11th is when it goes online. When has it actually got to be? Because it doesn't go to the county commissioners till the 1st of May. Am I correct?
That is correct. So we would be the pleasure of the board, but certainly that would be something we put on for the agenda for the 11th.
The only reason I hesitate to do a special called meeting, there's going to be spring break in between, and we already have one other special called meeting, but that's going to be near the end of the month, that we don't really have a choice on. But I would do with the will of the board. I serve you guys, so if that's what y'all would prefer to do. You want to digest it and then just have another meeting to discuss the budget one more time before?
Well, I suppose where I was going with that, I threw a bunch of stuff at you guys today about supplement changes, potential supplement changes and thoughts and ideas. I would like to come to the table with some actual proposals and decide what we want to put in that budget to be approved on April 11th to go out for public review on the 12th. And again, I know Eric is looking into some stuff on mental health. I don't know if he'll have anything specific to bring to us, but just some of those specific items, because we're talking about a bunch of ideas, and I'd like for us to get some of those in black and white before that April 11th date, because it seems like April 11th is not the day to hash through a bunch of changes. I feel like we should come April 11th with a budget that everybody's comfortable with.
We have a board meeting scheduled for 9 May, and so that would really be our last opportunity to vote to approve it before it goes to the commissioners on the 15th of May.
And I guess, again, to me, so this is saying April 12th, posted proposed budget on the webpage. That feels to me like April 12th, that budget should be basically done, and unless we get some really valid, somebody pointing something out that we completely missed, it looks to me like we should be done on April 12th, essentially. Minus some fine tuning for if something at the state level changes or whatever, but if I'm looking at that timeline right, that's what I'm saying.
Madam Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
So I think in years past that April date has been sort of what you're just describing. Certainly does not restrict you to that. I also think that I would recommend, because we have a finance committee meeting coming up next week, I would suggest that we dig in and see where we are maybe then, and then we can talk a little bit, and that committee can dig in and see where we are, and maybe make a recommendation for a timeline.
That works for me. Yep, and that's why I wasn't trying to propose to definitely have a special call, but I feel like we need to be ready by April 11th to have something that's pretty much baked.
So we don't have Steve with us, so Dr. Bryant, you're the closest thing to an attorney. So legally, does it have to be online by a particular time? Because this is considered our
No,
public hearing.
It's just been common practice that we
Thank you,
tried
sir.
to do that.
Okay, just want to clarify that, make sure I'm reading it correctly. Because my understanding is that we had to have this public hearing, even though we had no one come to speak. That's required by law, but just putting it online, we could actually hold off on that and eliminate having another special called meeting, unless this board feels like you would like to do that.
Well, the only question I would have, and it's kind of a Steve question, is that we did publish this budget calendar, but if it's not necessarily bound by law, do we need to have a vote to suspend the date or extend the date by 1 week or whatever?
Well, the budget calendar is actually for us.
Informational purposes.
Yeah, for us informational purposes, and we don't have that listed online. We do follow the open meeting laws as far as when we have to have meetings together to make decisions. But this one, I think we could simply just forego putting it out for, until you're prepared to put it online, sir.
And Madam Chair, at the 11th, you could come back and revise the calendar timeline as well.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you,
Motion to
sir.
adjourn.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, sir.